and operational expenditure. And the initial costing was done for a single shift, but option was agreed to that there will be 4 DHA staff, which will form part of the apex cost as part of the reimbursement. And this is aligned to the business offering of infrequent flight and very few passengers. And currently, Fireblade is reimbursing the department on a monthly basis in relation to those costs. We invoice them on a monthly basis. So the payment of personnel per annum for now is amounting to about 1.4 million rand. As I said, which we're collecting about 116,000 rand a month from the FBO. So moving forward, Chair and members, we recommend that you take note of these operations at Fireblade, and that the issue of the policy framework becomes, as Minister has indicated, we need to go to Cabinet. We want to deal with these issues of the responsibility, because, as I said, Home Affairs is the responsibility to ensure that we process people at the port of entry, and also the responsibility of the airport, insofar as licensing it for certain operations, is the responsibility of the Department of Transport. Our view is that we will continue to operate with Fireblade under the current arrangement, and then at a later stage, if there are developments in relation to the policy, we will then finalize the MOU, because that will be guiding us to ensure that the next application follows certain processes that at least will protect the department against what are called either audits or against the procurement process that was not followed. Because if we were to follow the rules in relation to unsolicited proposal, there's a different process that must be adhered to. But in this instance, we are honoring what the court said insofar as the application of Fireblade. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe can you just explain to this committee that this process started almost 2012. This process, and I know for a fact that you have put together a panel led by J.K. McKay, the DDG Immigration, with regard to the issues of standards and operational standards, and at the same time to confirm all the necessary equipment that are required in that particular space. And we have done the assessment, DDG McKay, of the equipment that is on site, bought by the Oppenheimers. Maybe you're not sharing with us again. But what are this MOU, you felt that it's not necessary to give it to the committee? And the point that we're dealing with throughout, and the objective of this meeting today, was more around the issue of the agreement with the Fireblade. I think you have heard that throughout the whole 2 weeks. The issue was that we want to have an agreement. You come to the committee, you don't even have the copy of that MOU. In the committee to this, you present, you did not even prepare a document that you want to share with Parliament. You're going to have it in your laptop and then leave. We're now talking the timelines of in the near future. This is what you may want to look at. You have already identified a gap, but you're not talking to us, DG, of how do you close this gap in regard to the policy point of view. You say there's no legislation, but you're not saying anything about the legislative making process. What are you going to engage on that? You still live in this gap that will rely on the MOU that is there for now, and in the later stage will come back. But in your engagement, again, the interest is more about the Department of Home Affairs. You're not saying anything about these other departments that you have mobilized. In fact, we are meeting with them and we are chairing the meeting that all departments are there. You're not telling us of the arrangement with each one of them. And you want us to say, no, transport, let's refer it to transport. Agriculture is, except the fact that agriculture works from 8 to 8 or 8 to 8 or to 10. That's the only thing. But you're not telling us of if this government has a responsibility to make sure that there is a particular arrangement in place, either it's MOU or an agreement, that will have to be championed by the government, and you will speak on behalf of everybody. What informs the 117,000? You said there's a funding model. Where is that model? What informs the 117,000? You know, so for me, at the level of what we wanted to achieve, it's more about making sure that the services that the state provide are informed by a proper, even if as much as you say that you are still waiting the appeal from the Constitutional Court, it means nothing was happening in between. Just wait for the time once they appeal, because either you took it that you're going to win the appeal, and therefore this thing will be reversed. You have not looked at if would not go, or how do they operate in between the appeal and ourselves. So I thought that, I mean, for me and for Parliament and the committee's members, as we have raised, that the state is providing a service. It's important that let's make sure that there is a proper MOU in place, right? MOU, how long does it take MOU Mokhodzi from Ligan? It will not even take you much. Based on the times that this whole process started. Started long time ago, this thing. And to date, you still have, the information we received when we met with the Open Emmers last time with the Fireblade was that that MOU is lying with the department for a long time. This is what we're told, right? And you are not able to help us navigate that part. And that is the concern of the Committee General. We all know that it's a new arrangement, but the fact is that what we're trying to make a point was that let's make sure that when the state is not procurement of PFMA here, that someone is procuring goods, therefore follow the procurement process as described by the PFMA. Here is the state providing a service to a private company. You know, so that is the point that I thought that as we engage with members, let's try and make sure that we identify those gaps, and those gaps will have to be covered as a matter of agent. You correctly say that you drive these officials, you drive them for about 20 kilometers from the main center. If anything happened on the road there, these officials got involved in whatever, how do you account for such? That is why the point I'm making is that either that MOU will have covered these issues. We are now talking to you more, you know, disabled on the basis that we don't even have that document called the MOU. If with the MOU, it was going to be better because we'll be able to refer to it and look at exactly what are these things that we're covering there. We're now dealing administration, not dealing politics now. We're dealing administration. Let me allow colleagues to come in. But again, DG, clear timelines is very important. Clear timelines. You know, you're dealing with all stakeholders. We don't hear that on this day, all stakeholders have met, and this is a plan that we have now put in place. This is what we are going to be following up. I think that detail is very important. So that when we prepare a report to Parliament, we'll have satisfied ourselves that whatever that the department is doing with the Fireblade, we can be accounted for. I'm just saying, I'm throwing these things so that you begin to understand the level in which the committee has a particular interest. And I think if we were to approach it in that way, you'll then understand the agents of what we're pushing to make sure that these areas are sort of attended to. The standard of operation framework, that document is important. That you have to share it with the Portfolio Committee of Parliament so that we know what is it that you have entered into. In the absence of policy and legislation, it's important that you share with us all that information. Because Yona is there. You have already approved it, by the way. If not, obviously, we do have a framework already with these other airports that are there, even if they are not the same as your arrangement, but they are the same standard operational framework somehow. You may amend it there and there, you know. So the concern that we have was that now that the court has pronounced itself, how therefore do we then operationalize this thing? That's the engagement for today. Let me allow members, Mam Dambuza, Honorable Hossein, Mam Kenya, Mam Kalipi, end up by Mam Raputi. Okay. It's on those lines.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Acting DG, for the presentation. I don't know whether I understood the Acting DG properly, because there's a stage where we are hearing that there is no agreement. They are just operating under putty arrangements. Now, I hear the chairperson talking about the MOU. Now, I wanted a clarity so that we are clear when we come to the report writing. Is there an MOU? Is it an interim MOU? Or there's just operations? Because to my understanding is that there has been a draft agreement which has not been signed. That is my understanding. Moving from that, Chair, I want to know, in fact, I want to comment on the issue of the policy issue. If you are saying, Acting DG, there's no policy, we all agree. But we know the process of developing a policy. It's not something that you can do it today and then cabinet approve it tomorrow. But for me, there should be an interim arrangement. And that interim arrangement should be signed off for the protection of those employees that are working there, and for other reasons. Because as Parliament, we have got a responsibility in ensuring that there is, the security measures are being taken seriously there. Yes, we did have a report of the operations that there is a sterile area, but we want to hear that from you. We cannot satisfy ourselves from the report that we get from Fireblade. We need that information from you guys. What is the situation? And then you got a legal advice from your legal advisors, in the internal advisors. My question is, did you communicate that advice to Fireblade instead of running away, not giving them the direction of what is happening? Did you communicate it? No, because of 1, 2, 3 from the legal advice that we get, we're not going to sign an MOU, but what we need to do, let's agree on an interim arrangement so that we are sure that operations are continuing properly. Thank you, Chair.
Just before other members come in, I know that I've noted you. Do you want to further talk to us about this MOU? You remember the last meeting with the Fireblade, we requested that they must provide us the MOU. That draft, which the department has not shared with us. You may want to talk more of that particular engagement. I am in possession of this draft now that we have circulated it to members. A number of these key officials, that starts from the department, which Rika communicate to Fireblade. Rika, who's Rika in the department? It's yourself. Okay, on the 4th of April. Right? Even Mavuso yourself, you do have a copy, meaning that this is your internal document. you'll then be able to assist the committee generally to understand that now that this MOU, is it at the final stage or you still going to refine it? Maybe just help us at the level of the department, because the Fireblade people, in fact, made a commitment and they've delivered on their commitment. And the department, obviously, dealing with us, does not share these key documents with the committee. Let me allow members to speak. You'll respond, Mavusas, because you did make mention of it in your document, but you have not shared it with the committee. So I thought it's important that members should sort of refer to that document too if there's any engagement. Mamo, who's the next person? Hossein is yourself.
Chair, thank you very much. Can I firstly just say that I appreciate the honesty from Mr. Mavuso on some of the risks and the problems that we've got with this whole Fireblade saga. But the more I read about Fireblade, the more I realize what a massive mess the Home Affairs has got itself into. And you know, Chair, this is the second major scandal, one after the other, that Home Affairs has got itself involved in. It was the Gupta naturalization affair and now this one. So when the public loses confidence in Home Affairs, we must know why. It's because of these type of incidences that actually erode all the hard work and the good work that some of the good people in Home Affairs does. Nonetheless, let me just raise the points or the questions that I want to raise with you, Mr. Mavuso. I was particularly interested when you said that there is this policy on unsolicited bribes. And in your own words, you said this whole thing, it did not follow any of that.
Unsolicited what?
Sorry, bids. Did I say bribes?
You said bribes, yes.
So sorry. Is there such a thing as an unsolicited bribe? I apologize. It's unsolicited bids. And you say that it did not follow any of that. Then you also talked, and you're not the first person to talk about it, and the minister also talked about the fact that there is no policy that guides the department on this. Now, what I'm struggling to understand is if Home Affairs has been engaging with the Oppenheimers since 2012, you know that there's no policy, you know that there's supposed to be a PFMA bid process, you know that you've got a policy on unsolicited bids. How is it that not one of you would have advised either Minister Gigaba, Minister Mkhize, Minister Naledi Pandor, and then you had Ayanda Dlodlo in between? You had 4 ministers. And this is the responsibility of senior officials in the department whose responsibility it is to make sure that everything you do is in line with law and legislation and rules and policies. I just cannot understand how is it that not a single one of you would have advised any one of those ministers to say, this is a red flag. There isn't a policy. You should follow this PFMA process. Like you're saying now, these are the risks. And you're telling us all of the problems that you're sitting with long after the fact, when it's your job in the first place to prevent these things from happening. In fact, Mr. Jackie McKay himself was so directly involved in putting this whole thing together, running around all over, trying to make this thing happen. And yet you say that you know that there's this policy on 2 different policies, but none of you have actually did anything about it or even alerted any of the ministers. Or unless you alerted the minister and said this thing is wrong, and they still went ahead. But if you didn't do that, it means then that the officials must equally take responsibility for this. And so the question I want to ask you is that what accountability is there going to be for officials who did all of this work, went against policy, to not one, more than one policy, in fact 3. Are they just simply going to get away with it, or is there going to be any accountability, Mr. Mavuso? The second thing I want to ask, Chairperson, is when Fireblade was here last week, they explained to us a situation under responding to a question by the Chairperson about this elusive bag that a passenger attempted to try and load a bag onto a Gupta plane. And in that bag was some suspicious items. And when they were questioned to open the bag to reveal what the contents were, I don't know how familiar you are with this, Mr. Mavuso, which surprises me because I'll tell you what they said, is that when the official tried to question the passenger on what's in the bag, He refused to open the bag and reveal the contents. Instead, they allowed him to take the bag away, jump in his car and disappear. And Fireblade informed us that they had reported it, if I'm not mistaken, to Home Affairs and to the police and to whoever else. It surprises me that you don't know about it, because the question I want to ask you is, what is the status of that? I know if I go to Oratambo with something suspicious in my bag, there's no way the immigration officers are going to allow me to walk away with the bag and go and pack it in my car. I'll get arrested. How is it that a passenger was allowed to attempt to take some suspicious items onto an aeroplane via Fireblade's terminal, and when they were prevented from doing so, they packed the bag in the car and disappeared? And that happened in sometime in 2015. It's now gone 3 years. There's no investigation, nobody's held accountable, and we don't even know what was in that bag. And let me tell you what my suspicions are. In the copies of the emails that I handed to the chairperson, I'll ask him to give you also a copy of it, where there's a conversation about how you could load bags via Fireblade onto an aeroplane and take that aeroplane and park it on the other side, the normal terminal, and passengers can get through immigration there and jump on the plane. In other words, the luggage is loaded via one side and the passengers get on the other side. That was prior to Fireblade getting their certificate. I suspect that this bag was part of that plane, and on that plane was the entire Gupta family, including Duduzane Zuma. It's in those correspondences, and I'll ask the chairperson to let you have a copy. But the question is, if you're not aware of it, is the department at all aware of it? Was there any investigation conducted? Has the police come back to you about it, or is that person simply going to get away with it? Chair, I asked earlier, and I want to remind Mr. Mavuso if he can please give us the information about the cost of the litigation, the cost to the department on this whole Fireblade saga. What did it cost in total? And lastly, Mr. Mavuso, in the affidavit that Mr. Apleni filed at the time when Minister Mkhize had suspended him, or whatever you call it, he alleged that there was a meeting between the Oppenheimer family and staff members, and she attempted to try and settle the Fireblade matter out of court. This is the DG saying this, the former DG. And he cited that as one of his reasons for urgency in court. And this meeting happened sometime in June last year, if I'm not mistaken. He alleges that there were some staff members that were involved in that meeting in attempting to try and settle this matter with Fireblade. Were any one of your senior members there at that meeting with Minister Mkhize and the Oppenheimers to try and settle the Fireblade saga out of court? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. It's me. It's me. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think I'm covered in some of the questions that my colleagues have asked. If you remember, Chairperson, when we have visited the Fireblade on the 31st of August, if I'm not mistaken, we briefly met with the acting DG, and he had to go somewhere because he was rushing, and then we couldn't satisfy ourselves, but we said no, we are going to get time because we raised some of the issues. I think it's high time to raise those issues here. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues have said regarding the MOU because it's a cause for concern. And if you go to page 21 on your presentation, acting DG, the first sentence that talks about 24-hour notification of international flights, I think you have also told us when we were there in Fireblade about this issue, and we raised concern as committee members who were present, and then you also agreed with our concerns as committee members to say that we're supposed to be worried. There is a lack of coordination between the Fireblade and the department, especially if we have to be notified by the fire plate because there are no officials who are stationed there. That was the first concern. And I'm very happy that it's also appearing in this presentation. And we raised this concern because it was clear that the fire plate staff, they operate in this VVIP alone. And we even asked you, DDG, to say that, how do you know that they notify you all the time if there will be flights that is going to arrive or there will be flights that is going to depart? Because it depends entirely on them to notify you. Because there's no one who's guarding our interest in that place. And to our surprise as committee members to find that the fire plate VVIP section is not actually inside OR Tambo. All along we're told that this VVIP section is inside OR Tambo. Including the chairperson, we were so shocked when we arrived there. It's like 30 minutes to 40 minutes away from OR Tambo. So it means these people, if they want to do anything, they can do it. One, there's no staff members of Home Affairs. Two, they are outside OR Tambo. That is another concern. And when Oppenheimers were here last week, we were very frank with them. We reminded them that, in fact, as this committee, we have encouraged the minister to appeal because we're not convinced if this was a correct project. It's us taking the decision in this committee. And then we were very frank with them to ask them some of the questions, including, because they were telling us that they are embarking on this project knowing very well that they are not going to make any money. And then they wanted to know, why do you have to invest on a project as a very serious businessman, let alone how did they make their money? We know their history. Maybe that is one of the reasons why the BLF and those people wanted to move them. That is the story for another day. But we know them, how do they accumulate their money in South Africa? We are clear about that. One of the colleagues was saying here to the chair during the break that says that the state capture, it's them who have embarked on the real estate capture of South Africa. We know them. We ask them if they want to make sure that they embark on such project while they know they're not going to make even 1 cent, is not because there's an issue of illicit financial flows that is taking place in South Africa and in Africa. There is not an issue of tax avoidance. And there are rumors that there are people who are coming to this country and who are training people who oppose to land expropriation without compensation. And if Home Affairs does not have any coordination to make sure to monitor the movement of people inside and outside the country, how are we going to know who are those people? Because in isiZulu, isehlane kuleyonto ye-fire plate. We can't even get answers from our department. Who is there 24 hours guarding our interests as a country? We can't get any answers from our officials and from our department. I agree with Honorable Hussein to say this is one of the projects that is a mess in our department. And when we even tell our colleagues outside about the fire plate and where is this fire plate, people, they got nightmares to say there's this thing that is happening inside the country where there's a private family who's operating a VVIP, not knowing what is happening 24 hours. Our state departments, depending on them, if they don't want to tell you to come and be there, they won't. And it's their money, they are powerful. And then the security of this country. That is one concern that I have, DDG. And when I look at this, I know that you are not involved, DG, acting DG. I don't know why I keep on calling you DDG, because we're an acting DG. If you look to this minutes, Chair, that the Oppenheimers have shared with us, because I think this is the part of of the submission that were made by the Oppenheimers in court in order for them to win this court case against the minister. There is a letter that they wrote on January 28, 2016, to the Minister Malusi Gibaga. And I want the DG also to clarify for the purpose of this committee to know, because after your presentation and engagement with you, we still have to meet as a committee and chart a way forward regarding this VVIP. And you must take a decision as the committee. In this letter is saying, I don't know if you have it, Acting DG. It's FA 65.1 and it's written 377. Thank you very much for seeing me, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to bore you about the content. And it further says that I was delighted to be told that all outstanding matters had now been resolved and that you had signed the necessary letter to empower Fireblade to offer custom and immigration at its facilities on the 3-year trial basis. That is Oppenheimers telling your department. So now, in your presentation, DG, you are telling us that you have started this process of this MOU December 2017. It has been a year already. But the chairperson is saying that this process, in fact, started in 2012. Engagement with AXA, with all stakeholders. But when here in your presentation, you are saying, no, after the court case, 2017 December. It has been a year now. So I'm sure that we are also in possession of such document from them. So you must help us to understand, to unpack this 3-year trial basis. What does that mean? Maybe the DDG, Jack Mackenzie, will help you, because according to all papers and documents, it seems as if he was part and parcel of this thing from the onset. Because, Chairperson, the reason why I'm raising this to the department, when we need to take a decision about this Fireblade, we must have all information in front of us in order to arrive on the correct decision. What is the way forward regarding this? The Oppenheimers told us that they are renting per month 112,000 of some sort, I'm not sure. And the DG, I don't remember mentioning that, and the chairperson have reminded him as well. So if it's not reflecting on your books as the department, it does not mean that that is an irregular expenditure on your part, DG. Secondly, I'm also concerned, Chair, when the DG is telling us that so far SARS have not made any money. How is that possible? Because according to Oppenheimer's presentation, there's a number of flights that have been inside the country and outside the country. So does it mean there were no goods to be declared or to be charged? So DG, this thing speaks to that concern that we raised with you. There is much problem in terms of coordination of this thing by the department. So it speaks to that thing to say that there's no way. Go to the country through SARS, we have not made any money in this VVIP. I'm sure you'll agree with me that there's something wrong with this.